Good morning and welcome to Psych Talk with Sean, where we talk psychology and then some. I'm your host, Sean Hupel, and today we're going to talk about something that's going to sound very general, but at the same time, general. Like seriously, it's straight up boss level. If when you really look at it, like straight up boss level, thousands of years old boss level, okay, follow me on this. What is the definition of a good person? Seriously, we got that colloquial definition. In fact, a couple episodes ago on Psych Talk. Real quick before I jump into this, I have been wrong about what time this airs. Alright, so this actually airs 7 a.m., which means on your way to church. Let me bless you. Bad joke, bad joke. I used to be a pastor. I can get away with it, but at the same time, bad joke. I'm calling it out. Even if some of you don't. So, yeah, 98.3 at 7 a.m. in Salem, Oregon is when this show airs. In fact, I'm going to request that this one be the next episode, even though it's episode 12, because I think right now is the time that we should be reflecting on what makes a good person. Why? Because we have been apart from people, and even before that, we've got a world of people that are hurt and putting each other down and in video games griefing each other. I mean, it's pretty up there in how we mistreat each other. I feel guilty whenever I don't have something in my pocket to buy food or water for a homeless person. I feel guilty. Some people don't. I see that as the problem. Norway is, they don't have homeless people. They don't. Their government cares. And I think what a lot of people are feeling is that a lot of the people running government here don't care. Like, they care about themselves, their talking points, publicity. They care about fame. They care about where are my followers at. They care about ideology. But they don't really carry ideals, do they? At least that's my opinion. Does my opinion count? That's the question you got to ask yourself. Now, I mentioned before, a little bit earlier, that the colloquial, which if you missed previous episodes, Autistic Commando on YouTube, I'm also on TikTok, and I never thought I would say that phrase out loud. It's actually really a great place to gather information quickly. But Autistic Commando on YouTube. Because colloquial is how we turn this group into a definition. We narrow it down. Why? Because those friggin', that's because they are, Now, a lot of people can relate that to a lot of different things that they've felt, believed, or heard. And the fact that we all can relate to something like that is the problem. Let's just be completely bluntly honest here. Because I said psychology and then some, so let's dive into it and have a little bit of fun. I'm going to sip some coffee. By the way, Northwest Local, Columbia. I got that bourbon barrel aged, and then I got this one special honey sauce, right? It's like it's a smoky honey sauce from Johnson Inc. or Corporation or some weird thing with Johnson in it. And you mix those two together, that bourbon barrel aged from Columbia, and it's just like, oh yes. But their packaging sucks. It got so much worse. I don't know who their branding person was, but I mean, it would be great for... moving on. Oh, that's good coffee. Sorry, the reason I dip into coffee is because this is an uncomfortable subject to realize. We aren't a pleasant country. We're not nice to each other. At least not by my definition. But what makes my definition better than yours? What makes yours better than mine? Well, let's break down what a good person is. Colloquially, and again, Past episode, Autism Commando YouTube. Colloquial is turning something into a definition, turning a group into a definition, okay? And every time I hear something like that, I think the N-word. I think the derogatory terms for Latinos coming over here to work and get a better life. Okay, I am best friends and brothers with somebody whose parents did that. And they were naturalized. We are a country of immigrants, yet we shun immigrants. Especially right now with what's going on across the world. Like I don't get it. The humanitarian doesn't seem to be there. Why aren't we humanitarian anymore? Why can we walk right by somebody on the street? Well, part of it is some people fake it, don't they? Like the reason, the stereotypical reason that people wanted to give, or the colloquial reason, is those homeless folks, they're just going to use on alcohol, right? That's not the case. Some are legitimately homeless, and some people, one lady was followed. I remember watching this episode. She was followed to her car, and she was banking about $70,000 to $80,000 with her panhandler license and pretending to be homeless. And she used that to basically fund her vehicle, her home, and put her kids through school. Not joking. Dead serious, not joking. But is that a bad person? So we'll go into the definition of a good person in a second, but let me ask you this. Is that person a bad person? The one that faked being homeless? Because let's look at the effects of it, right? So that person who faked being homeless and was caught. Okay, they were exposed. But were they really caught? There was another guy who worked at a well, actually, I'm going to stick with this one because there was a guy who basically, real quick, he worked at a zoo. Only he didn't really work at the zoo. The zoo thought he was employed by the county. The county thought he was employed by the zoo. And after 30 years, he retired. He was collecting $5 entry fee. I mean, as far as scams go, that was pretty darn brilliant. And from what I understand, he put his kids through school and paid his mortgage. In a time when a person of color, a black person, was having trouble getting jobs and keeping jobs and not being belittled in jobs. I think that was, from a monetary standpoint or a capitalistic standpoint, pretty brilliant. Because he was leveraging an asset he didn't have. But what about the mom that pretended to be homeless? So she's a mom. She kept her kids housed, fed, put them through school, had a nice little car to drive around in. She gave them a good, cushy life. And she was out there basically acting. She was acting homeless to beg for money. And she put on a show. She dressed herself up and made herself look pretty grungy. And she got plenty of money, more so than a lot of people working full-time jobs. And she had to stand out there, or sit out there, for 8 to 10 hours a day. Okay, that was her job. Only she made it for herself. Okay, that's one side. The other side is, people hear stories like that and they don't want to donate to homeless people because now, not only are they drunks, but they're those homeless, the colloquial for homelessness, like now you don't even know if they're actually homeless. And it basically gives permission for apathy. So there's empathy, which is where you basically empathize with somebody else. You try to put yourself into their shoes. Apathy means you're brushing them off. You don't care. You don't want to. There's no inclination to even remotely understand how that person's feeling. That's apathy, which ties right into narcissism and sociopathy, right? So when we look at, how to say this, is that person a bad person? She supports her family, but in the end, she could be harming or preventing future families. Because there have been plenty of homeless people that have made it through pursued things on the side, and gotten out? Could she have inhibited those people, inhibited perceptions towards those people, and caused those homeless people, which that population is significantly growing right now, but could she have disenfranchised people that were legitimately in need? And those people that were legitimately in need, a lot of them are crackheads. Seriously, like, they're people that they won't drop it on alcohol, they'll drop it on crack. Or they'll drop it on meth. You know, meth is cheap out here in the Northwest. Are they bad people for trying meth? To forget the pain and forget the hopelessness. I told you we were going to get deep. People brush off, oh, I'm a good person. Are you? Are you, though? Because the reason I stopped being an associate pastor is people were constantly coming up for prayer every Sunday about what they did every Saturday, and it's always the same thing. It was unique to see one of our ministers impregnate one of our followers while still married to our minister of music. That was a unique one. But then again, that person also had a rough upbringing and came from a very unique background that I know and I'm not going to share. But is that a bad person because of that? Because of a moment of weakness? Or is he a good person because he is to this day taking care of that child, as well as his child with the minister of music, and he didn't fight the divorce? Is he a bad person? It really, really drops the veil, doesn't it, when we start asking these pointed questions that question our own morals and our own stance in the world. Because there are so many people who believe in whatever they believe in, that's a face, a facade, if you will. They don't really believe. They don't really walk the path. They don't want to walk the path because Range Rover. Like, oh my God, look at that TV. Man, Netflix and chill's going to be even better. You know what I mean? Like, there are so many things that people are gluttonous about. The one thing I am grateful for in the past few weeks, and I'm going to be a hypocrite and take another sip of this delicious coffee. I can't tell you enough how much I love this bourbon barrel aged, but in fact, that might even be a future episode. Like why we're attracted to certain things instead of certain people. Like when you think I'm just going to be, oh, what makes a good person? This ain't no lie episode. So let's go with the definition of a good person, because that's what helps define our own individual aspect of a bad person. And we're going to look at this at the micro level, that's the personal level, and then we're going to look at this from the macro level, that's the community level. So there are principal tenets that we all know to be endemic to being a good person. Don't lie. Don't steal. Don't take what's not yours. Don't cause strife for other people unnecessarily. Don't unnecessarily fight. Don't kill, please. Lord knows, I mean, Schadenfreude. Okay, so check this out. But don't you feel a little bit of joy when you see the bad person in a movie or show killed? Don't you feel a little bit of joy from that? The phrase that's coming to mind is, I'm repulsed yet I can't look away. Now, I used to use that as a joke, then I really thought about it, and that's kind of why people used to come out to hangings and beheadings back in the day. Like, that was a big spectacle. And people brought their kids, and people were selling the equivalent of popcorn back then, which was like a roasted rat or something like that, you know. But, yeah. What makes a good person? The bad person is obviously don't do bad things. We all inherently know what bad things are until we're taught otherwise. Like, kids are naturally generous. They naturally get along with each other. They naturally want to get along with each other. Now, can they be possessive? Yeah, if you teach them to. And some of us teach them unwittingly early on, because that's all we knew, and that's all we know in this capitalistic society, and narcissistic society, and selfish society. And I want to be famous. Remember that back in the 90s and 2000s? I want to be famous. But wait, famous people are bad people. So what is your definition of a good person? Is it somebody who goes out of their way to help other people? Is it somebody who goes out of their way to help a neighbor move? Or unpack and join the community? Is it somebody who buys coffee or food for the homeless? Is it somebody who sews quilt tops like my grandmother did for the homeless? Is it the pastor? I've known plenty of crooked pastors, let me tell you something. You go to Southside Chicago, at least half of them don't believe. I could tell you that firsthand because I've spoken to them honestly and candidly, and they've spoken right back. That's also because people I talk to in confidence, they know I will never tell their secret. I may talk on a macro level or analysis, but I will never share personal secrets about personal people without permission, ever. You could put me in front of a grand jury, and that will never happen. And that's why I was able to gather the data that I was able to gather and effectively infiltrate different communities and just learn and gather and, hey, what's this culture like over here? I'm always curious. I'm autistic. Come on, that's built in. But the definition of a good person, there's a thing called moral wounds. I want you to put a pin in that. Seriously, put a pin in that. Because I'm going to go into what makes a bad person. So, colloquially referred, there's a general understanding that a bad person kills, steals, cheats, tries to take control of other people, tries to manipulate other people, tries to gaslight other people. And yet, what about privilege? Every religion since the beginning of time, every cultural teaching since the beginning of time, every society that lasted past 100 years since the beginning of time has said don't be gluttonous, right? But I need that TV. I need this. I need that coffee. I need my morning coffee. Think about that. Think about how often we use the word need. Do we? The other day, I was kicking myself because I'm driving along, and y'all know I love coffee, and I love a good latte. I'm driving by Mugs over here in Lebanon, and best coffee south of Portland, hands down, easy. Because I've tried them. The second best is Arbor Hut Espresso on South Salem on Commercial, and they're awesome. Right in the same parking lot as Gutner's Gardens. I know the owner. He is just, that man can smile through anything. He is probably one of the more generous and kind people I've ever met. I love him. Don't tell him I said that, please. Last thing I need is he's a really, really good person. And that's my definition of good, is humanitarian, right? But here I am driving past Mugs, and I want to get a latte. I know that right now, with the goals that I have, I need to be saving money, not spending it frivolously, and I've cut back a lot. And as I'm driving by there, I'm like, oh, I'm going to give me some Mugs, and then go down to Hazella, which, by the way, as far as baking goes, if you're in Lebanon, go to Mugs, then go to Hazella or Colette's Bakery. Oh my gosh, the artisans we have out here. Oh, wow. You won't find anything close south of Portland, and even then, you'd have a hard time finding the same equivalent in Portland. Seriously. But I drove past because I didn't need it. The universal is that for the love of money is the root of all evil, right? That's something that's repeated and repeated and repeated. Pick a religion, pick a culture. That's another correlation that's always repeated. When you get gluttonous, That is the love of money. That is the love of things, which money can buy. And in our gluttony, we often tend to disregard other people. Why? Because we're giving ourselves more and more permission to be selfish. So let's break down the bad person persona. So the bad person persona, the unilateral correlation of any bad person is selfishness. Gluttony is a result of selfishness, stealing, killing. Okay, lack of empathy, that's what it takes to kill somebody or to walk past a homeless person and not care anymore. It's a lack of empathy. Or, in psychological terms, sociopathy, as in sociopath. A sociopath is somebody who, that's who they are. And with everybody else, sociopathy is something people choose to be. They choose to adopt. I mean, the pseudo-sociopaths and narcissists. A narcissist is somebody who puts more value into material things and into themselves than they do into other people, which is the antithesis of every religion since the beginning of time, except for the weird ones. They're called cults. But yeah, since the beginning of time, right? So why don't we? It's the same reason as Schadenfreude. Okay, when we feel a sense of privilege, there is a sense, we actually feel pleasure. So when Schadenfreude back in the day used to be known as wanting to see a hero fall. Because when we see the disadvantage of another person, even though it's minimally proximal, meaning, okay, how many billion people in the world? And that one person going down just a, that doesn't directly impact us, opens up, I guess, a distant perspective, imaginary door, futuristic, like one day I can possibly achieve this, yay! That's, like, it opens that door, and it because of that, it psychologically allows us to feel pleasure because I guess our prospects are more open. Our society and our interconnectedness has evolved quicker than our cells and our genes. Okay, believe in religion or not, that doesn't matter. We still evolve. That's why a couple generations in a different area, we get a different skin tone, don't we? Okay? Like, you can't argue that. It's already proven. And it doesn't interfere with religions. Speaking as a former pastor. But, seriously, when you boil it down to the central correlation, selfishness. And you know what's funny is selfishness is pretty much endemic to capitalism, which is the ongoing argument on TikTok right now. Again, I know I just said that out loud. Please, you know what? I don't want you to forgive me. I gotta forgive myself for that one. Because it's TikTok. TikTok is supposed to be fun. Or it was. And now it's for activism, I guess. And agendas and ideologies and cliques. So a tribe is basically an extended family. A clique is a group that you choose to adhere to and prescribe to. And they usually, like a clique or a tribe, usually hold similar ideologies or common goals. So the common goal could be like, oh my god, I want to survive. I do too, let's make a tribe. And protect each other and hunt together. And in the modern world, it's, oh my gosh, let's form an online community. Hit this hashtag, okay? Hit this hashtag. Seriously. And pay attention. I'm going to tell you something serious. Or, hello, I just want to bring something light to you. I want to make you feel good. Or, listen, I want to validate what you think you believe. Why? Because you're right. Even though you're wrong, you have no evidence, I have no evidence, but you know what? And you see all of that online. But you know what it is? It's some commentator stating their opinion to get views, likes, and shares. Why? Because that translates into money. More potential money. And the reason we see these social media people come up and go down is social media is the new trend for celebrity. Like if you're not in a movie, like social media is the way you go. There are songs that say, I can make you Instagram famous. Like, okay, I... And people buy into that. Because we want to be exalted over others. We want to feel privilege over others. Okay? We all want this. We all want to feel privilege at some level or another. Some want to feel it more than others. And that generally stems from a place of trauma. Seriously, I can back this up all day long. Narcissism generally stems from trauma. It could be parental neglect. It could be the absence of being taught. I'll throw it to you this way. In fact, the Native Americans, they killed this one. They absolutely knocked it out the park. All right, so let's say oh, you know what? African tribes too. Let's do that. We'll throw both of them in there because they both do the same thing and it's very effective. What they do when somebody is shunned, when somebody does something wrong, is they will ignore that person. The entire tribe will ignore that person because we are social creatures and that does have an effect. And then the person learns, they get taught, and they get nurtured back into the community. And the reason I've said in previous episodes that the wealthy are going to have the hardest, absolutely hardest time self-actualizing, it's because they don't have a need to. There's nothing to struggle against, and we naturally need stress. And so it's much more difficult for them to step out of their sense of privilege and step into, okay, what do I want to do? I actually knew a gentleman like that. His name was, well, I'm not going to say his name. I almost slipped right there. Well, not almost slipped, like I should have, yeah, anywho. My original Sifu. So when I was kicked out at 18, I ended up living with a literal kung fu drug dealer. I'm not even joking about that. We met during a bar fight about a year earlier, back when and again, I said when I was kicked out at 18. I was getting into bars at 17. I was that kid. And this goatee, if you're watching online Autistic Commando on YouTube, this goatee has been here since I was 12. So we ended up, and he floored me, and then I got up, hurting, and I chased him down and said, can you teach me that? And sure enough, I did whatever he said until he said, I will teach you. Fast forward a year later, I'm getting kicked out. Well, not a year, but close to. I'm getting kicked out, and I ended up living with this Sifu. And, he was doing... They technically weren't illegal at the time because they hadn't been identified by the CDC, but that was about the end of our relationship when I found out he was dealing in that stuff. But then again, I didn't have a choice. It was that or sleep outside. And he came from a well-to-do background. Like, he actually fought in tournaments in Thailand against professional Muay Thai fighters. And he was using Pakwa Kung Fu. And he's good. Like, he's one of the few people that, if he ever wanted to fight, I would run. Like, no question about it. I would run or put distance or something in between us. Because I do not want that. So all of that said, he escaped a narcissistic background. He never wanted to talk about it. And he wasn't the only exposure I had to the wealthy class, right? But they neglect their children. They basically do what tribes do. Only they also have the extra effect of trying to impose their will upon others. In fact, if you talk to millennials, this is a huge qualm with the parenting that we received, is we were neglected because parents were working and all that other good stuff and just trying to live their lives through us. And that's a very, very common thing out there. Are they bad parents? The narcissism that's in the upper society that gets carried generation over generation, does that make each new generation bad people? Or does that make them ignorant people because they didn't learn from people that never taught them? And they haven't had the exposure because they have all this privilege. They have no need to go out and search for what really makes them happy. It's starting to get complicated, isn't it? Then you got these tribes, right? And they shun somebody But that person comes back and they're welcomed back into the tribe. And the same thing happens today when it comes to different TikTok communities, only sometimes people get shunned forever. Are the people shunning bad people? Are the people who made a mistake bad people? And should they remain bad people? So I'm just asking questions about what defines a bad person. Let's jump into what really defines a good person. Well, that's a little bit more complicated than what defines a bad person, right? So a good person shows empathy. We covered that, right? But what if the empathy is shown towards bettering humanity as a whole versus bettering a human? You brush off, I'll use the kid analogy. Because, we've all seen movies and heard movies about these inventors that, they're saving the world, but they ignored my kid. I felt ignored. No, I wanted my father. We have movies like that. That's a stereotype. The obsessive inventor. Okay. But what if the obsessive inventor is doing something that will benefit multiple lives at the expense of their own child's well-being mentally? Is that a bad person? Are they a good person naturally because they're trying to save humanity, whether they succeed or not? Are they a bad person for neglecting their child? It all boils down to our value system. So, if you live in Russia, you know to be strong. You know you're strong. Russia's strong. I've never met a Russian that wasn't strong. Seriously. Like whether they fake it till they made it or whatever, I've never met a weak Russian. Never in my life. And I could stand firm on that one. That's the culture they come from. Culture I come from, we survived free-range parenting. And we definitely tested the limits of that one. Ultimately, what a good person is somebody who doesn't directly inflict moral wounds. So moral wounds, what are those? Oh, we're about to get into the fun stuff. Moral wounds. Let's go for drone pilots, right? So you're a drone pilot, and basically you're sitting in front of a computer, flying this aerial drone in order to support your military assets, right? And those military drones, they're armed with guns, they're armed with bombs. And what they've been discovering is people who are flying those drones, even though they are just in front of a computer, the knowledge that they are causing harm to another person causes what's called moral wounds. So these people are suffering from PTSD, depression, all of that, second-guessing their place in life and all of it. Why? Because they knew they killed somebody. They knew they hurt somebody. And what you'll find is, well, I guess if you talk to soldiers, the first time is always the hardest. Same thing with lying. The first time is always the hardest. And then you get used to it. But you never really get used to it. If you talk to perpetual liars, if you talk to people who were in the military who faced crisis on front lines, you hear from all of them that, there's moral wounds about this. And even though it gets easier, you also have to get desensitized. Because which desensitization, that is removing part of what we are. It's reprogramming. And it's been used for a very, very long time. But the end-all be-all gist of it is, with reprogramming comes a rebellion, a natural rebellion. Either by our ego, which our ego supports narcissism or supports the whole selfish argument. And when we give ego priority, That's when you hear people at the end of life saying, wow, all the things I earned, all the things I gained, they didn't mean anything. I want my family to love me. You hear that frequently. I mean, it's happened so much it's become a stereotype and is colloquial with, end of life. Funny how all these episodes are tying together, doesn't it? But moral wounds are when we are doing an action that directly conflicts with our nature. Our nature is to be social creatures. Our nature is to survive. Our nature is to procreate. Our nature is to create and innovate. Our nature is to imagine. I just spoke of the human nature as of the past 4,000 years. True story. That one's easy to back up. That's the easiest thing I've ever said to back up. And when we start acting against, how to say this? Morals. Okay, there we go. Morals. That's usually what defines a good person, right? So what are your morals? Well, when we break it down, it's caring for the life of others. Caring for ourselves, but caring for the lives of others. Could be an unborn child. Could be a homeless person. Could be a family member, a neighbor. It could be the people you visited on a mission over in another country because you volunteered. You've got all these different ways to benefit other people, but no matter how you spin it, the moral of the story is to be better to other people. Remember that phrase, moral of the story? And every story is talking about, okay, don't get tricked. Don't hurt nobody else. Don't get hurt yourself. Okay? Don't hurt others and don't hurt yourself and don't get hurt. That's the basic breakdown of every fairy tale I grew up with. I mean, shoot, that even goes to Mary Poppins, don't it? All those great classic movies, they all talk about overcoming hardship and adversity, but still staying a good person, even though you have no reason to be. Think about it. Okay, Lion King. Okay, let's go Lion King for a second. Simba had every reason to off his uncle. Every reason. In the world. Yet, when it came down to it, he didn't. A lot of people find it heroic when somebody doesn't retaliate. But do you have to retaliate? Is karma going to catch up to him? Because karma is another way of saying, well, I don't have to retaliate. Somebody else going to do it for me. In fact, that instills a sense of privilege, don't it? Oh, I'm hitting some people close to home right now, aren't I? So when you say, oh, they're going to get theirs. Karma's going to catch up to them. Mm-hmm. They're going to be dealt with. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. Does that make you feel better to say that or to think that? Does it make you feel more secure to think that and say that? And does wanting to see the other person fail make you a bad person, according to your own morals? Now let's say you help nudge it. Let's say something happens to where somebody did you wrong. And they're already going down. You just made them go down a little bit quicker or harder by saying this one thing to that one person, by not doing this one thing, by neglecting your duty or obligation or promise. But wait, does that make you a bad person? Because you want to see somebody else fail. That's Schadenfreude. That's an ego response. The ego is selfish. Okay, so, I mean, all that stuff aside, as I've mentioned, the biggest breakdown is we all know what roughly defines a good person. Somebody who cares about others. According to every cultural and religious teaching since the beginning of time, except for cults, the weird ones. In fact, you can even go to polytheistic religions, and they still kind of halfway preach that, but they very much celebrate emotional states. Like the whole Greek gods thing and all that good stuff, that's just emotional states. translated and personified. But moral wounds are when you're acting against your morals. And they cause, I guess to use the colloquial, spiritual wounds, right? Personality wounds. You feel guilty. And if your guilt lasts beyond the moment, then it becomes a trauma. Trauma is defined as basically harm that lasts. And that's the simplest breakdown of it, but it's also one you can't argue against. Because trauma that lasts causes us to have a defensive reflex to not let it happen again. One way or the other. It could be becoming passive, it could be buying people's love, it could be acquiescing, it could be rebelling. See, the moral lines are fine to walk because we all come from a different perspective of what is right and what is wrong according to our environment. But we know what's right and wrong, don't we? What's happening in Afghanistan is absolutely impressive in scope, scale, and apathy. It's absolutely impressive. But it's not the first time we've seen it, where somebody's personal ideologies cause them to ignore the tenets of their religion and enforce their religion onto another person, only it's not their religion, it's their ideologies that they're enforcing over others. And they're doing it collectively so. That's why in a previous episode, alpha-beta complex. Like, whether it's natural or naturalized, it's here. And beta behavior, insecurity behaviors. They're here. What do you think the Taliban are? They're insecure people that stemmed from a people that were horribly oppressed, which caused them to be radicalized, which caused them to seek power. Now, if they have power, I guarantee a lot of those folks that just took over, they are going to lord that power over others. How do I know this? We've done it in America. We've done it in South America. Humanity loves to lord over other people and have a sense of privilege. A sense of privilege means a sense of security. Because if you have privilege, then you have an advantage over somebody else, which means you're more likely to survive than they will. That's how our ego works. It's an on and off switch. And it's a self-defense mechanism. In fact, I'm going to grab some coffee. I hope y'all are following this if you're watching through CCTV or on YouTube. Because I pretty much do this whole dang thing off the cuff. And it's tough to do. It's really, really tough to do off the cuff. Because you got to keep track of everything that you're talking about while staying centralized to the subject matter, while still diverging to all of these different spin-offs. Because you want to cover as much ground as you can within, let's see, I'm at 45 minutes on video recording right now, and I want to keep it down to bare minimum like an hour 10 at most, right? And the other one, it's just straight off, cut off at an hour. Because I have an hour-long show, 7 o'clock, every Saturday, 98.3. They've got two different acronyms, so I don't know which one's going to be in the morning. Things got changed a little bit. I know I said 10:30 in the morning before, but that isn't the case anymore. All right, let's jump back in. So here's the deal. One other thing that a lot of religions say is that once we become mature enough, basically adolescence, like the timelines they give are rough to adolescence. So once you go through adolescence or puberty, you become an adult, capable of child reproduction. And I just had a wave of misogynistic history hit me on that one. Being autistic isn't always easy. You get to visualize everything you're saying. Speaking of, autistic individuals are meek. Other people seek advantage. So I'm just using autism as an example. I mean, pick a disenfranchised group. but feeling privilege over, say, somebody autistic and bullying them, okay, that's projected schadenfreude. You want to diminish somebody else so that you can have a quick spark of euphoria, of feeling superior, which, I mean, you feel superior, so your ego's going to give you a reward chemically, so that you want to feel superior again, and that you want to be superior. But what is superiority? We're all human. We've all got different capabilities. We all come from different backgrounds. And if it wasn't for our diversity, in fact, I think our neurodiversity, I don't think the human race would be here. We might have been passed up by Cro-Magnon, Neanderthal, so on and so forth. Even though Cro-Magnon kind of went extinct before us, there's still crossovers here and there. But there were like 8, 9, 10, 11 species of, I guess you might say, Homo sapien, in a way. Like, you know, bipedal, hey, they look like us. There were a bunch of them. We've got the archaeological findings to prove that, and the genetic findings to prove that. So what separated us? It was our ability to look forward. I truly believe it was our perception of time. Because our perception of time made us look at things mechanically. Like, whoa, how does this work? Can I make this better? Can I make this better to help me achieve a sense of privilege, like a house, or a living quarter, or a hut? Will I be able to get this weapon? Can I make this weapon? And hunt. I mean, it can be traced back all the way to some of the earliest records. I mean, period. Human nature is human nature, and evolution doesn't work that quick. Like a couple thousand years, that's not even the blink of an eye. That's the reaction thinking to make you blink. And that's the catch. Is we instinctively know that together we are stronger. A cord of many strands is not easily broken. But when we try to leverage ourselves, that's when all of a sudden we start becoming selfish. And in gaining more and more privilege, that's when narcissism becomes more and more easily acquired as a personality trait. Because the more you're privileged, the fewer threats you have. Now, why would I give up of myself to help that homeless person? I can't relate to them. They're of a different class. That's segregation. But at the end of life, I should have been nice to that homeless person. Those moral wounds catch up to you. Because we can ignore wounds. Like right now, I am ignoring pain. I am in pain right now. Physical pain. But we can ignore pain. We can ignore wounds. And after the first time, it gets easier. After the first lie, it gets easier. But that doesn't change the fact that at the end of the day, just like my Sifu, sometimes you want to get out of that environment and be more natural to who you are. He is a martial artist. Absolutely. He loves the Kung Fu philosophy. That's who he is. I'm a humanitarian. I can own businesses, but I'm also a public servant by nature. I want to see people better, and I want to engineer things that make people better. And in my professional career, that's shown. And for a lot of people, that's the case. So what is the ultimate answer to all this? Okay, we're talking good person, bad person. Why? Well, the long story short is this. If you want to avoid moral wounds, we all instinctively know what a good person is. Now, the more we do bad things, like being narcissistic and, I need this. Do you, or do you want it? And if you want it, have you considered the price? That's the big thing. I want to feel this way. I want that thing. I want that lifestyle. I want that experience. Okay, great. Is it at the cost of somebody else? Because we are social creatures. And when we deny that about ourselves, it creates moral wounds and ultimately an existential crisis in the last moments of life. Not joking. Some people die happy, some people don't. The people that don't, give you two guesses whether or not they have moral wounds. And moral wounds are based around our morals, our ethics. What do we value? Do we value things? Or do we value people? What defines us as a good person is ourselves. I know I've been beating around the bush this whole time, but I wanted to ask the questions. I wanted to paint the scenarios. Because the mother that's trying to basically cheat the system to put a roof over her kids' heads by acting homeless, I don't think that person's a bad person. I think they're taking an opportunity that was afforded to them, but they also have moral wounds for the same because they're lying. And they got used to it. And that's why they felt convicted when they were approached by the reporter. I read that person's body language. They very clearly felt hostile, convicted, threatened. But they also felt threatened because they might have their income threatened by a reporter telling the truth. Is the reporter wrong for telling the truth and costing them their job, maybe? Or their pseudo-job? Well, their job was based on deception. So who's right in this scenario? Like, if she loses her job, then she could lose the house, the car, and the kids could struggle. Like, it's individual to us. Because some of us have had to do things to survive, okay? Some of us had to fight to survive. Like, literally survive. Not just the whole, I will survive for as long as I know how to love. Well, number one, you need to know how to love. But you could stay alive without being a good person. But let's go back to music, since we just dived into music, right? Well, since I just kind of took a, oh, snap, 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 and then I fell in the pool. So since we're in the pool, let's swim. Make the best of a bad situation. Life gives you lemons. Go ahead and brew up some vodka and make yourself a martini. I feel like doing something classy. And then save a little bit of lemon for a twist. No, seriously, that's actually really fire if you're into that kind of stuff. And definitely moderation. And that's one thing that people forget is moderation. So, music. When you have people that I want to be famous. I want to be a billionaire so freaking bad. Well, yeah, they do. That's narcissism. They want more than what they need. Every religion and every guru since the beginning of time says don't take more than you need. And when you take more than you need, you take away from other people, or you take away from the whole, ultimately resulting in sociopathy and narcissism unto sociopathy, instead of empathy and compassion. The people we admire the most as kids, when we're still innocent before the world teaches us to be hard. Those people are nice people, okay? I mean, Yeshua, right? Let's throw religion out the window and just focus on the man that we know as Jesus, or Yeshua, right? Or Buddha, or Gandhi. These people are compassionate people. The people we respect throughout history, the people we care about throughout history, the people we wish to emulate throughout history, are good people, right? What makes them good? When you boil down to the basics of every one of them, the central correlation between all of them, it's compassion. Compassion is caring about other people, being the social creature and recognizing that you have what you need. So let's make sure that other people have what they need. So all of these people who show up throughout history and make a huge difference and last for thousands of years in written record and historical memory. These people were compassionate people. They cared about others. They traveled and said, hey, don't take more than you need. Because once you start taking more than you need, again, the first time leads to the second and the third and the fourth. Well, that one latte, well, I could go. Ever since the beginning of time, a cord of many strands wasn't easily broken, which is how humanity became the dominant species on the planet. We were diverse. We recognized that there is strength in diverse background and differentiation. And so we ended up coming together from different backgrounds and perspectives, and decided, okay, we're going to fix this, and then we're going to fix that, and then we're going to fix that. And we had to listen to each other and accept the tools and knowledge from other people with different experiences that have overcome those experiences in order to benefit the whole, communally. Listen, it's up to you what you define as a good person or a bad person. At the end of life, I mean, we came into this world alone, we're going to go out alone. That's just the simple, cold, hard truth of it. Are you going to regret the life that you lived here? I mean, I don't know if you believe in spirituality or not. A lot of people do. And there's thousands of years of it correlating historical record, meaning similarities. It's just they get lost in translation because we all spoke different languages. Like throughout history, like cultures, yeah, languages. Ta-da! So with all of those different languages, of course, there's going to be ideological differences that translate into the written teachings that we're learning from. Okay? It's always interpretation. And how you live your life is your own interpretation. But one thing I do mention when I mention these gurus and all of that is they are honored, revered, respected, and they are seen as good people. The warlords, conquerors, and so on, they are seen as bad people. They conquered. They got what they wanted. And at the end of life, they didn't get to take any of it with them. Not a single thing. At the end of life, when you talk to old folks, which, number one, if you can go in with a good heart, I highly encourage it because some people are alone. And they would like some comfort and maybe somebody to hear their stories. But go in with the right spirit. You know what I mean? Like, don't go in like, hey, I'm going to learn something from you. Or I'm going to verify it. Like, go in with an open mind because you'd be surprised. Like, when people are at end of life, they are so willing to teach and to teach against the lessons that they've learned. Like, teach lessons they learned along the way and against the mistakes they've made. Because there's no filter. There's nobody else to impress. There's no need for narcissism and social perspective. Like, you're on your way out and they want to make the best of it. Everybody does. Like, I haven't met the exception. It's just there's a lot of regret and some people aren't willing to face themselves in that regret. Meaning they just shut themselves off and so on and so forth and pretend like everything's going to be fine, I guess. But then you have people who are just going to be completely honest. And that's the majority. And it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter who they were. Every single person talked about being a better person. And their relationships. Community. I know we label socialism as a horrible, horrible, absolutely, oh my gosh, it's going to destroy the world. Ah! But keep in mind, the Netherlands don't have homeless people, and they are doing just fine. They really are. In fact, people are very, very happy over there. But they also took the social responsibility to say, you know what, this problem's hard, we're going to solve it. And we're going to respect our fellow human beings. Whereas in America, I can still circulate the internet and find a picture of a 1930s gentleman stepping out of his car, having his butler or his driver hold the door for him while he peed on a homeless person. Urinated. That's still a hard one for me to swallow. But then again, I'm a compassionate person. See, we're so easy to throw colloquialisms. And I really do encourage Autistic Commando on YouTube. I do recommend watching, if nothing else, that episode. Colloquialism, right? I think it's episode 11. But I highly recommend watching that one because the second we start throwing labels, we can start throwing traits. So you define it as, oh, you're a socialist. Oh, you're a communist. Oh my gosh, you're a liberal. You're a capitalist. You are a Republican. You're this color. You're that color. I mean, we can label people all day long. But I guess to quote the heart of Martin Luther King, since I can't quote him directly, I dream of a day when people are judged by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. I very much uphold that. I believe that everybody is unique, individual, everybody brings something to the table, and it's just a matter of talking at the table to figure out who's passing what. Okay, but I believe that we should be more in tune with one another. Do I need this, or do I want this? And if I just want this, can I apply what I was going to just throw away here to helping somebody else? Can I put my time that I was going to watch this YouTube or TikTok into maybe helping somebody else or lifting somebody else up around us? A good person is somebody who passes away without moral wounds, recognizing that they did everything in their power to better the relationships and lives of other people. That's my definition. Your definition is going to be your own. Make sure to get vaccinated. The Gamma variant is apparently more than twice as deadly as the original. The Delta variant is more than twice as transmissible than the original. Please get vaccinated, because the same way that we got rid of polio, let's get rid of COVID. Stay blessed.